Welcome to Follow the Money. I'm Eric Bowling. Our states are going broke, and a pension time bomb threatens to explode and destroy dozens of our major cities. Last night, 60 Minutes laid out the groundwork. Take a listen.
California, which faces a $19 billion budget deficit next year, has a credit rating approaching junk status. It now spends more money on public employee pensions than it does on the state university system, which had to increase tuition by 32%. Arizona is so desperate it sold off the state capitol, Supreme Court building, and legislative chambers to a group of investors, and now leases the buildings from their new owner. The state also eliminated Medicaid funding for most organ transplants. Then there's New Jersey. It had the highest taxes in the country, a $10 billion deficit, and a depressed economy when first-year Governor Chris Christie took office. But after looking at the books, he decided to walk away from a long-planned and much-needed project with New York and the federal government to build a rail tunnel into Manhattan. It would have helped the economy and given employment to 6,000 construction workers. And nowhere has the reckoning been as bad as it is in Illinois, a state that spends twice as much as it collects in taxes and is unable to pay its bills.
Coming down on today's All-Star panel, on the left, author Steve Adubato, and on the right, radio host David Webb and Bo Dietl, founder of Bo Dietl and Associates. Steve, good day to have you on. Coincidentally, that package 60 Minutes last night. Friend of yours, Chris Christie's there. He was highlighted, but he did point out he had to stop that tunnel project. He's having a hard time dealing with the unions.
Well, the bottom line, it's not just a union issue. Listen, I supported the tunnel. I believe it was the right thing to do. But here's the problem. Even if it's good for transportation and the environment and the economic development of the region, if you can't afford it, you can't afford it. That's not a liberal or a left point of view. It's not a conservative point of view. We all have our families. You don't have the money to pay the bills. You don't have it.
We're going to delve deep into this later, but still, he did mention that the tunnel project's one thing, but he's having a hard time dealing with the unions.
Don't put it all on your unions.
Putting a budget together. He said it.
I hear him. Listen, the governor and I agree and disagree with certain things. On this one, to put it all on the unions, I don't believe he was doing that, but even if someone says it's the unions, it's too easy to do that, Eric.
We're going to dig in. We're going to dig in. What else did you hear, David?
Well, and to go along with Steve, yeah, if you can't afford it, you can't afford it. But a fair amount of this does have to go to the costs in the union labor in this project. And the thing is, even with the projected shortfall, which could be as high as $4.8 billion over the years, that doesn't mean it won't increase, because what do union labor costs always do? They always increase.
Go ahead,
it is not the unions. But let's face it, the unions are paying out big pensions. We all have to take our belts and pull it in. We talk about this over and over again.
That was his point.
He says, I don't have the money. So what do we do?
Well, let me get you to respond to this. It is the unions. He did say, I have a 401k. The private sector has 401ks. They get hurt during the stock market downturns. But people are surprised.
Look what happened in Newark.
It doesn't matter if the
look what happened in Newark with Cory.
You still get.
Well, look what happened in Newark with Cory Booker, who I have a lot of respect for. He told the police department, "Look, let's talk about it. Let's not lay off any police officers. Union, please come in. They didn't want to hear anything. He laid them off. What's going to happen is, I'm a pension guy for the New York City Police Department. I understand my pension is very small, very small.
You don't have a conflict of interest.
No, can I finish? I'll cut my pension.
We're going to have a lot more time to discuss on the panel. As our cities and states face financial collapse next year, highly regarded research analyst Meredith Whitney predicts 50 to 100 sizable municipal bond defaults amounting to hundreds of billions of billions in dollars in losses, destroying what were once thought of as safest of all nest eggs. Nevada is in deep trouble. Estimates for next year's state budget already show a shortfall of almost $2 billion, which is more than half of their annual budget. Illinois shows a shortfall of more than 40% of their budget, and the list goes on and on. Only a small handful of mineral-rich states like Texas and West Virginia avoided complete catastrophe as a result of higher oil prices. Joining us now are Euro-Pacific Capital President Mr. Peter Schiff and financial guru Larry Winget, author of The Idiot Factor, The 10 Ways We Sabotage Our Life, Money, and Business. I'm going to start with you, Schiff. Right away, I saw that. I called up the producers. I said, get Schiff on the show for tomorrow. This is big stuff. Municipalities could default. I mean, did you see this coming, Schiff? Because you've seen a lot of things. Did you see this one?
Sure. I mean, I wrote about that in Crash Proof. I've been warning about the problem in municipal debt. You know, it's not a question of the states going broke. Many of them already are broke. The bondholders haven't figured it out yet. You know, Meredith Whitney is erring on the side of caution in her estimates. I've been telling my clients for years to avoid municipal bonds because there's only two things that are going to happen. They're going to default, and you're not going to get your money back, or the government's going to bail them out, and your money's not going to be worth anything when you get it back.
Can they default,
either way,
Peter?
you're going to lose.
Can they default, though? I mean,
well, sure,
let's be realistic.
They should be allowed to default. They should be allowed to restructure. My fear is that either Congress officially bails them out or Congress refuses, but Ben Bernanke does it on his own. And he starts buying municipal bonds the same way he's buying treasuries or mortgage paper. All
right, let me bring it over to Larry Winget. Larry, we asked for you because in that 60 Minutes piece last night, they said Arizona, one of the states that had to sell a couple of the municipal buildings just to cover some payments on pensions. What happens when a family is spending more than they have? What do you do, Larry?
Well, usually you have to cut back on your lifestyle. You know, I had a great question this morning. Somebody wrote me on Facebook and said, listen, I'm on a limited income. I still figure out how to balance my checkbook, pay my bills, and save a little bit, all because I've learned how to say no to myself and learned how to do without some things. Why can't they, meaning the government? Well, why can't they? And it's because they're not willing to do without some things or learn to say no to themselves. Listen, easy decisions got us in this mess. Tough decisions are going to get us out. We have to tighten our belts, and it's really easy for us to say that. We watch Governor Christie and we say, look how tough he is. That man, I admire that. Until it affects us.
Right.
When
Larry,
it affects us, we go, whoa, you got to find the money.
If we can only transfer those over to government. Hang on, you two. Stay there. Stay in this segment. Adubato, you're shaking your head. You heard Schiff say, you know, we saw this coming. And I asked them, can they declare bankruptcy? What if Newark, New Jersey was bankrupt?
Forget about the fact that the crime rate would go through the roof because you can't pay for the cops. Forget about the fact that you can't sweep the streets. But here's my issue. On the money side, forget about it as a commentator, Eric. My money guy told me, let's get out of equities a couple of years ago when things went bad. Let's move into the municipal bonds. How many of us made that move because we believed it was a more conservative move? I'm a good saver, I'm going to save it. Now they're telling me it might not be worth anything.
Absolutely, and that's what happens when you default on a bond.
You want to know something?
It comes back.
I got divorced. They talked my ex-wife into buying all these safe municipal bonds. Now we know that the ratings are going down. Some of them getting so defunctated they're off the sheet.
You know, I don't know where your money guy was looking, Steve, but Vallejo, California was the first one to go in 2009. We are going to need a structure on the state and municipal level coming through Congress for managed municipal bankruptcy. If the unions don't give and willing to sit down and renegotiate, the golden egg is the taxpayer.
Schiff,
can't afford it.
What happens when it looks like a municipality may be on shaky ground? Tell us how do they borrow? How do they pay for things like water projects?
They don't borrow. That's just it. And what this will do, a bankruptcy will force them to go back to their employees and say, we don't have the money, so we're going to have a 50% pay cut across the board. That's reality. You don't like it, quit and find a better job. We're going to restructure these pensions.
Let's get down to the heart of it. What's causing these shortfalls? I mean, why are they spending more than they take?
Because they're politicians. That's how they get elected. Look, I live in Connecticut. Connecticut is completely broke. Connecticut is like a Greece. It's all kinds of phony accounting in our budget. I ran for Senate here, but we didn't even have a state income tax. I forget when it came in the late 80s. But they brought about the income tax because they had some budget problems. The state is in much worse shape now with an income tax financially than before we had it. The problem isn't that there isn't enough revenue going into Hartford. It's that they keep on spending because nobody says no to these public employee unions. They shouldn't exist. That you have this relationship where the politicians keep giving money to their unionized employees, and then those unionized employees work to get those very politicians reelected, and then they get a raise.
You want to know something?
There it is again. Right? And I'm glad you brought it up. That's exactly what
right to the union.
Eric, here's the thing, and I heard what was just said, but here's my problem. New Jersey has among the highest income taxes in the country, and I don't love it, especially because our property tax is so bad. But if you say, you know, we've got to say no, we've got to draw the line, but you know what? We don't really need that income tax in Connecticut. Well, how about if you need more revenue? No, how about if you need that revenue?
You guys can talk taxes to you.
No, but we're talking about
spending.
Bingo. Why are they mutually exclusive?
Bingo. Hang on, guys. We have to leave that segment here. Because I want to bring this guy in. This is a good friend of ours. It's Mr. Stuart Acuff, who's going to tell us exactly what's going on with the union. Stuart, are you there with us?
I am indeed. Thanks, Eric.
Now,
Great to be with you.
Here's my issue, Stuart. There are thousands, if not millions of people out there watching saying, you know what? I have all these municipal bonds. I'm worried about them blowing up. And here's you're telling me that these municipalities are paying more to their municipal employees and salaries and benefits than they're taking in, and my investment that's supposed to be safe might blow up with it.
Well, the first thing we got to do is we got to stop punishing workers for the nation's economic ills. We're in a 2-year huge recession that was started during George Bush's term. We've got 30 years of declining or stagnant wages, which has forced the funk in the economy. And there's not enough money in the pocket.
Hang on, guys, hold on, please.
Come on, let me finish.
Guys, no, let me stay with Stuart.
Let me finish.
But let me talk about this for a second.
Let me finish.
Look at the stats,
Let me
Stuart.
finish.
Go ahead, finish
And
that,
there's not enough money in the pockets of working Americans to drive this economy. That is the basic problem.
Stuart,
but government workers' pay have been going up.
Hold on, guys, please. Let me stay with Stuart. There are municipalities that are going bankrupt because they're paying more than they're taking in. They're paying their employees more than they're taking in. Look at Nevada. 54% of next year's budget, 54%, they're going to be overspending by 54%, $1.8 billion. Illinois, 40%. New Jersey, at about 38%, they'll never catch up. It doesn't matter how good the economy gets. They'll never catch up unless they start cutting and maybe renegotiating pensions and deals they made with the unions.
Well, I don't think there's any problem with renegotiating in a fair way either the pensions or wages. What you don't want to see is people unilaterally cutting pensions or cutting wages. Remember, pensions are an obligation. They're a commitment. They're a promise. And this country is not about breaking our obligations to working folks.
But Stuart, you're contradicting what you just said. You said it's okay to renegotiate. Now you're going to tell me they're a promise, a contract, and don't break it. Which one is it?
All I'm saying is there is no problem with renegotiating in a fair way. I'm against unilateral wage cuts, unilateral budget cuts, unilateral pension cuts, and I'm totally against what somebody said earlier about destroying public employee unions. That's a violation of fundamental human rights. It's a viation of international law.
You have a right to work for the government.
I will tell you, Stuart, Richard Trumka, the president of your union there, says it's unfair and it shouldn't be done. You guys are at the wrong end of that stick. Go ahead, Schiff. You heard Stuart Acuff say on one hand he's okay to renegotiate, but on the other hand it's a contract.
Well, number one, if you look at the pay of government workers, state workers, federal workers, they haven't been stagnant. They've been rising every year. That's the point. One of the reason that private sector workers are seeing their pay fall is because their money is being taken and given to federal workers and state workers. They're now making, federal workers on average are making twice what workers in the private sector are making. We need to give the government workers a pay cut so that everybody else can get a pay raise because we are paying their salaries, and that's not fair.
Hang on, guys. Hang on. Go ahead, Steve. You want to jump in? You guys are all chomping into the big.
Well, listen, that's why I got to tell you something. I hear everything you're saying, but here's my problem with it. You point to the unions. Everyone points to the unions. What about the politicians? I'll give you New Jersey. We could point to the Democratic governors like John Kors and others who were supposed to know about money and didn't do the right thing. But I'll give you another one. And you know this. Christy Whitman cut the income tax. I'll explain it.
Thank you.
No, you know why? Because you want to frame it a certain way. And I agree the unions have some culpability here. But to say that when taxes were cut, income taxes were cut 30% under Christy Whitman, and you want to know the problem? We were not paying the pension contributions at the time in order to make a political move. That's connected, but that's also the pay.
Wait. David's been very patient here. But isn't it true that it doesn't matter what happens in the economy, that you're a federal worker, you get that pension no matter what? It goes up no matter what. Doesn't matter if there's a downturn economically. That doesn't seem fair. People out here don't want that.
Not only is it fair, it's just bad math. Okay? Here we have federal, state, and local municipal workers who simply take the money from the taxpayer, pay in. Whether the state does or doesn't pay the pension costs, the pension liability when you put in so much and you get out 3, 4, 5 times as much does not work. It's not, hang on, Bo. It's not good math. New Jersey, Steve, Perfect example. Largest employer, the state. Where is the state as a result of this? Where are the pension and liability costs? It doesn't work, and the AFL-CIO makes a specious argument about we won't negotiate, but they won't change the collective bargaining structure to allow for fair negotiation, period.
And it's very, very important, too. Some people who are not in unions had 401ks. What are they worth now? Nothing. They're not going to have a pension.
Are you okay with renegotiating?
I am very much so.
Cops.
Yeah, I told you, I get a pension. If we got to cut across the board so we can get something, I'm for that. Also, these figures are from 2008 in a lot of these states. Are worse than what we see.
What's the problem with your colleagues?
These are 2011 numbers, guys. These are 2011.
No, I'm talking about.
Hold on. Stuart, go ahead. You're hearing it. There are people on this panel from both sides saying, you know what, it's out of control. David makes a very good point. We're not even talking about unfunded liabilities that could be, across the country, more than $1 trillion. Some people say up to $3 trillion.
What about if they start retiring?
Go ahead, Stuart.
And you got to pay.
Wow.
Well, no, I mean, people don't have enough money in their pocket for one reason, because of the Wall Street meltdown. $2 trillion of this country, $2 trillion of this country's wealth was destroyed by the private sector. By the private sector. $2 trillion of this country's wealth was destroyed by the Wall Street meltdown and greed on Wall Street. Let's be clear about where the problems are. Let's be clear about where the problems are. And the worst thing we can do today is to look again and again and again to punish workers for the nation's economic crisis. Because workers drive the economy.
Stuart,
workers drive the economy.
They don't drive the economy. Their employers drive the economy. Small business drives the economy.
Totally wrong.
When an employee pays in,
stop. So you getting this out of Karl Marx?
Stuart, when an employee pays in,
no, they don't.
Is this about who can talk the loudest?
Hey, Stuart, when an employee pays in $150,000 into their pension, and then it's equal to $3.2 million, I got a little bit of a problem with it. We got to pull in our belts, otherwise everything's going to explode.
Hang on. Stop.
Is that Bo?
You said you can't.
Do you know a working family that's pulling down $3.2 million?
Guys, no. That's the unfunded liability portion of it.
Let's be serious.
We're going to have to leave it there. I want to hear what last word from Larry Wingen. How about we all treat our municipality, we all treat our budgets the way we treat our own family budget?
That would make a lot of sense to me. You only get to buy what you can afford to buy. You only get to borrow what you can afford to pay back. And the only fair way to actually make this happen is to unilaterally cut it all. I know Stuart said you can't unilaterally do it, but I just can't see it happening any other way.
We have to leave it there. Guys. This is what happens when you put 6 boxes up. Stuart Acuff, appreciate your time, my friend. Up next, political riots overseas, flames, anger, protests, and with our cities and states teetering on the edge, could it happen right here? What's in the cards when Follow the Money continues? The Fox Business Network, the power to prosper. The Muni Bond, the nest egg that would be there no matter what, a sure thing, a slam dunk, a no-brainer, but guess what? It isn't. Older Americans who bought them for the golden years may have a very different reality than the one they had planned. The traditional safe haven of Muni Bonds is about to blow up. States will have to borrow to pay for roads, libraries, and even your water supply. This is a very bleak picture. I want to bring in Larry Wingen right from the start, sir. In Arizona, they had to sell the State House. Boy, if this isn't an example, and then, by the way, come back and lease the State House back from the people they sold it to. Boy, government going crazy. What's happening, my friend?
Well, they also did that with 20 other state buildings. It's a problem. When you realize that municipal bonds get 1/4 of their revenue from property taxes, and property taxes normally lag 2 or 3 years behind because they're not assessed every year. Well, obviously, real estate's just not worth what it was, so there's going to be less money there. They also get 1/3 of their money from the state, and the states, as we just discussed, are broke. Muni bonds are in trouble. And it's going to be a problem for everybody. They're going to see their nest egg shrink from an ostrich egg down to a quail egg, I'm afraid. This is a problem for everybody. Their only choice is going to be to raise taxes, and that's not going to fly with anybody.
Right. And Peter, go ahead. What happens if Larry's right and you start seeing municipal towns, cities, states going under?
Well, then we can start getting control of these state budgets. I mean, this is what has to happen. We have to have some way to push back and downsize these state governments. I mean, yes, it's going to be painful. People who have bought municipal bonds, they're going to lose. Hopefully they don't get completely wiped out. There's some kind of restructuring. But what we need is to see state governments shrink.
What do you mean some kind of restructuring? You mean
a
bailout, a federal bailout?
Well, no, not a bailout, meaning that they don't pay 0 cents on the dollar, but they don't pay 100 cents on the dollar. But what they need is to dramatically reduce their workforces, reduce pay, privatize services, look at maybe adopting school vouchers so they can let free market forces come in and bring down the high cost of education, which is some of the problems in these state budgets. But they have to get under control. The problem was in the stimulus, the last rounds of stimulus, the government gave the states money so that they didn't have to make these tough choices. They kept on spending, and now they're in even worse shape. And when interest rates rise, and this is when it's all going to hit the fan, when interest rates start to rise and the credit dries up, that's when it all hits the fan.
Hold on, Peter. Steve, should the good people of Texas bail out the people in California, Illinois, Massachusetts, New York, New Jersey?
In theory, no. In practice, yes. And here's why. Because if, in fact, California goes under, if Connecticut goes under, any one of the states you're talking about, how is it good for the rest of the country? If, in a free marketplace situation, you'd say, hey, listen, they couldn't make it, let them go under. The problem in government is when they go under, that means that the people suffer. Now, are we saying we're really not all one country?
No, we're saying we are a free market economy.
The people will suffer more if we bail them out.
Look, there's going to be exactly. Listen, do I believe in the free market
system? Why should the government not be a free market economy?
A pure free market, and I'll tell you why.
Yeah.
Here's a simple example.
Because I'm pretty sure the Founding Fathers had that planned.
Yeah. Here's the problem. The Founding Fathers didn't plan on AIDS, and I'll tell you what I mean by that. There are certain things that government does in terms of health care costs and taking care of people who have the least ability to take care of themselves. That's a bad bet. That's bad business. But what do we say? There's not a good ROI, return on investment, so screw you, you're out. I'm saying it's not analogous.
Hold on, Peter.
Why
are you
overlooking?
I got to stay on the panel. Go ahead.
Here's part of the problem, Steve. You're talking philosophy. Now let's talk the numbers. And it's not a slam. If California, for instance, has the ability to go bankrupt, it gets to renegotiate those those programs. It gets to renegotiate with the unions. It removes a huge portion of that $26 billion. That's what needs to happen. That doesn't take away from helping people to what you're talking about. It means they're actually better able to do it.
So let them go.
Because when you change the contribution model and the benefit model, and you actually have it so that private and public sector are closer to being equal, then we have a better model to go forward.
I agree 100% what you just said. But in reality, this is as bad as any war that we're going to get into. Right now, this economy is so bad. We talk about it all the time. We're on the show. Sure. The president has to react. This woman here, this murder,
bailing out the states makes it worse.
Has been following the economy so closely. We have to put people in there that really know about it. And we can't listen to these stupid senators, stupid congressmen standing there wanting to get the air of the floor. We got to settle this problem.
Ahead,
and it's our president that has to do it.
Go ahead. You're chomping at the bit. Go ahead, sir.
Yeah, bailing out the states makes it worse. Yes, will there be some pain maybe for people in Texas if there's a default in California? Sure, but there'll be a lot more pain if they're forced to bail them out, and it's actually going to hurt California. Because if we bail out California, then we don't get the restructuring we need. The California problem gets bigger, but now you have a moral hazard problem where you have all the states saying, why should we be responsible? Let's just run big deficits because we're going to push off the cost of running our government on the citizens of the other states, and then everybody is going.
And where's the lesson learned for California?
All right, go ahead.
Where's the lesson learned for California? If two guys live next to each other, and one guy buys more house than he can afford and goes bankrupt, and the other guy does everything he can to hang on to his house, is he responsible to make that guy's house payment?
But guys, there are bankruptcy laws in place. Are we saying we shouldn't have bankruptcy laws either, Larry? You're okay with that, right?
Absolutely. Let them go bankrupt. Let them restructure. But don't let another state who's been responsible step in and take care of their irresponsibility. That's not right.
No, what about it, Steve?
Listen, I appreciate the argument in theory. Here's my concern. You got two things. One, if all of a sudden you got people going under because they say, listen, nobody's going to step up, let's go under. Illinois goes under. I argue it sets the tone across the nation that it's, quote, easier to do that and then restructure, and then you've got an epidemic of government.
Goes under, Ireland might go under, Portugal might go under.
Will go under.
Will go under.
And I say
so
that's
if California goes, hey, Schiff, what about that? If California goes, Illinois says, you know what? we're in as bad a shape as they are. Why don't we just declare bankruptcy and do the same thing?
Well, I'd rather have all the states going under than getting bailed out. That's going to cost us a lot more money.
Absolutely.
And we need to let the bondholders, too. Bondholders need to know that everything has risks. So they'll look around the states, and they won't keep funding these state programs every time they want to borrow money, because they have to be worried that maybe the taxpayers won't cough up the money to pay them back.
We're running out of time. Peter Schiff, you hit it right on the head. The bondholders need to know there's going to be some sort of stability. They need to know what their risk is. And right now, they don't know what their risk is. I got to say thank you to Larry Winget for being here. Peter Schiff is going to stick around for the rest of the hour. Up next, the Corruption Matrix, a daily roundup of corruption stories that we find from around the globe. Follow the money. We'll be right back.